I'm Richard Murray. I'm the Executive Director of the Ohio School Facilities Commission.
We know the clock is ticking on us. You need to leave at 6 o'clock in 25 minutes.
Thereabouts.
And so we have a few questions. We appreciate you taking time to talk to us. Director, the first question we wanted to ask you was in response to the Inspector General's report. Your assessment of it, do you accept it or do you reject the conclusions?
Well, let me say it was a daunting process to undergo the examination and the hours of interviews that we went through. I accept it for the recommendations and the statements of the my conduct and the meetings that I had. There are aspects of it, however, that lead you to believe that my conduct was unprofessional and irresponsible, that I abused my authority. I think the events that they cite are essentially factual, but they tend to weave together and reach a conclusion that I don't altogether agree with. What
do you mean by that? Weave together those events to reach a conclusion?
Well, there are facts stated in the report that talk about meetings that I had and events that I attended, but the conclusions tend to be that these were abuses of my authority and that I acted irresponsibly. And so, to that extent, I don't agree with some of those conclusions.
Well, to jump into the report, to cite one of them, Gary Coleman's 15-minute tirade, as it was been described by various parties, Anthony Mantell, the superintendent of Clay Local Schools, saying he was basically shocked that you just sat there and watched that go on. That's one of the incidents that was raised and resulting in that finding that you had abused your authority that's led to 3 newspapers and the state Senate president have called for you to resign. Will you resign?
Well, the incident at Clay certainly represented unprofessional conduct on the part of Mr. Coleman, and even the commission chair cited outrageous language that was outrageous and conduct that was unacceptable. I was there. I mean, I don't want to. This could become a matter of legal import, so I don't want to go into all of that. But I'm aware certainly of the calls for my resignation, and the governor continues believing that he knows everything there is to know about my conduct here. Believes that my conduct has been responsible and that I've done nothing wrong. As long as I have his support, I'll continue to do the job here.
So I'm clear on that. You're saying to me right now that you will not resign.
As long as I have the governor's support, I will not resign.
When you look back upon that meeting, your decision to be there, not saying anything, do you have any regrets about that?
Well, yes, I do in part. I think when I walk into a meeting that I should understand the agenda of someone I walk in there with. Gary Coleman's someone I've known for some time, and I believe that my role in there was going to be to talk about the commission policy relative to project labor agreements and prevailing wages. And it became more of an issue, became more of the job site issues that were occurring at the Clay School job site. And I wish I had known that and believed that the discussion was going to go towards issues that were really not OSFC issues, but issues that Mr. Coleman and the laborers had with how work was conducted on the site, that I would have been left out of that discussion and left that for another time and another place. I was there to discuss commission policy, and I wish it had been just limited to commission policy.
15 minutes of profanity-laced and threatening remarks by Mr. Coleman. Why didn't you say anything?
Well, this was, I don't know that I am going to agree with the total characterization of the amount of time involved and profanity-laced. He certainly had a point of view. He certainly had a head of steam, and he certainly let his opinion be known. Was there profanity used? Whether it was laced or not, would leave, will be in the eye of the beholder. Frankly, in terms of everything that was said back there in October, almost 10 months ago, I don't have complete recollection of everything that was said, but I would agree to extend to the characterization that there was certain anger and issues that Mr. Coleman attempted to pursue that were certainly his and his point of view, but that simply I wish that I had not been part of.
How important do you think neutrality is in your job?
With respect to
your
all issues?
Personal preferences for union work versus non-union work and anything that goes in between as far as the bidding of contracts go?
Well, neutrality is certainly an issue and something that the Inspector General attempted to use or use as a kind of a doctrine. There is the Commission itself supports project labor agreements and prevailing wages. And when I discuss those matters, I don't think I ought to be arm twisting, and I don't believe I have arm twisted anybody with respect to those issues. Those are home rule, local initiatives, and they are left to the local elected officials to make that decision. And likewise, if I have a preference for union labor, that should be mine. I think again, I don't know how I can, because contracts are bid at the local level. They are won or lost by the low bidder, and the low bidder either is non-union or union. I don't know how I affect that, as has been charged. I don't know how I affect that, because that is a process under the law, and my preferences or anyone's preferences matters very little with respect to who's the low bidder.
So I got that you reject the arm twisting accusation in what you just said, but I didn't hear you address the issue of neutrality and the importance of it. Do you feel neutrality is important in your job?
I don't. I do. I mean, I don't think as the director of the Ohio School Facilities Commission, I ought to be promoting union or non-union labor. And the only way that evidence itself is through the bidding process. People, union and non-union companies bid. If they are the low bidder and are otherwise qualified, they're hired by the school district at the local level. But with respect to policies of the School Facilities Commission, project labor agreements and prevailing wages, I think we agree, and the Commission agrees, that I don't simply need to be a mere conduit of the policies. I may have opinions, but the question becomes then: do I arm twist? Do I? And that was some of the allegations in the Inspector General's report. And I do not believe that I've acted irresponsibly to arm twist school districts to do anything that they otherwise didn't believe was the right thing to do.
Given your background, your history, your work history, I'm sure that most people can infer what your personal opinions are in terms of union labor versus non-union labor. I come from a union background, and I have worked for union contractors and a union itself. But on September 14th of 2009, I became the executive director of this agency, and those functions that I pursued on behalf of union contractors and union laborers, I put behind me. And the question that comes from that is, are you doing enough to shield your own personal opinion from your work? Are you doing enough to stay neutral?
Well, I understand that there is that perception out there. And the question always is, what's reality versus what's perception? If there is perception that I am union only, then I think I need to work on that, because I don't believe that represents my conduct here over the last 11 months. And I don't think it represents what is the local initiative and the local decisions that are made around contracts. I understand that perception, and I think I need to work to dispel that perception that I am union only here. 70 to 80% of the contracts I sign are non-union, because there are non-union bidders out there in greater majority than union bidders. I sign those in good faith to let that work go forth. We're putting people to work out there. We're spending $1 billion a year in construction in this state. You have a concern about putting Ohioans to work. I have a concern, as does the governor have a concern about putting Ohioans to work. This is an agency that does that.
But three of the examples cited in the Inspector General's report were using an email address that was lecet at AOL.com, using your phone that you had in your previous capacity, and the other one was, I don't want to find it right here, you announced at union meetings that you were a card-carrying member of Local 423. Were those in line with what you're saying now, that you have an obligation to have that appearance or perception of neutrality?
Well, those are true statements. And I paid for the email address from AOL, and I paid for that phone, and I am a member of the union. I've been a member for the last 5 years. I've never worked on a union job site. It was an affinity to say, as I work with those members of that union, I respect that if I'm going to work for your safety, if I'm going to work for your training, if I'm going to work for your jobs, I should have, I should be one of you. To the extent to which those lead to perceptions, I would work on those. Part of keeping the phone and the email address was, everybody knows where to find me here, and and my technological prowess is probably at a low point. So I did what was convenient. When I took this job, the many decisions I had to make and the many activities I had to go through, I didn't have a whole lot of time to make a lot of changes. It was head down and get going here. So there was not as much as intent there as outcome. But those are examples of, yes, those are true statements, but who in the general public would take that to mean that I haven't fully divided myself from my prior life, other than I use a phone number and an email address that I used in a prior job.
But the email address is the name of the organization that you work for, that you used to work for. I mean, who would see that as an example of neutrality? Who would look upon your use of that email address and say that's an instance of somebody who's neutral in terms of figuring out who's going to get work and who's not?
Well, we're going to agree to disagree on whether or not to the general public who knew nothing of that email address that really portrayed that.
But outside of the general public, inside of the realm of people who are inside the work that you do, I'm sure some of them were aware of that. Some of the people who were on the other side of the union were aware that you were continuing with that email address, and I'm sure that would have influenced their perception and made them think that, question your credibility.
I'm not sure how I become uncredible by continuing the use of an email address. I took on a new email address when I came here, and anybody who wanted to find me here was able to do that. So I know that's an indicator. I have a hard time kind of acknowledging that was a small item. But again, if it's perception, then I'll work on that perception.
The other accusation, or not accusation, I should say, the finding of the Inspector General's report was the abuse of your authority. Do you see how the Inspector General reached that conclusion?
Well, I don't. I mean, one of the examples I think is cited is my attendance at a New Boston School Board meeting in November, and an allegation that I attempted to trade our concerns about the site of that school district with a PLA. And I simply reject the allegation that I attempted to do that. That would have been abuse of my authority if I said, if you do this, I'll make sure that your project has clear sailing, and this, meaning PLAs, if you side with the unions and adopt their PLA. I think that would have been wrong. I didn't do that, and therefore I don't believe I abused my authority in that instance.
They're misunderstanding that, because I've spoken to that superintendent in New Boston, and he assures me that's what you said.
Well, I was at a public school board meeting, and that's what he believes I said. Now, you're a reporter. There was a reporter in the audience. If the reporter in the audience had thought I had abused my authority and attempted to strong arm and shake down the New Boston School Board, I think that reporter would have reported that. That didn't happen.
I wasn't there, so I can't really comment on that.
All right.
I hear your point.
Yep.